I'm Emily Anderson, 28 years old, a graphic designer scraping by in Chicago. Last Thanksgiving, my mother stood up at the head of our long oak table in the Lincoln Park Colonial House, surrounded by 30 relatives, and grounded me like I was 12 again, just because I asked what my grandmother actually left me in her estate. The room exploded with laughter. Forks froze mid-air, wine glasses hovered, eyes darted between us. My face burned so hot I could feel it in my teeth, but I locked eyes with her and said one single word: "All right." The next morning, she knocked on my bedroom door with that same smug tone she always used when she thought she'd won. "Finally learned your place," she said, pushing the door wide. Then her smirk vanished. Closet empty, drawers cleared, suitcase gone, no trace of me. She stood there staring at the made bed, the silence louder than any argument we'd ever had. Before she could even reach for her phone, the doorbell rang sharp through the house. On the porch stood the family lawyer, Matthew Davis, briefcase clutched tight, face pale and voice unsteady. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What have you done?" "I'm Emily Anderson. And this is the story of how my own mother tried to erase me from everything my grandmother built, only to watch her entire plan unravel in front of the same people who laughed at me the night before. If this already has you leaning in, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you catch every twist and drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? I read every single one. Let's see who's staying up late with this one. Now, let me take you back to last September, the morning everything started falling apart. My grandmother, Rebecca Brown, passed away at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago on a drizzly Tuesday. I got the call from my mother at exactly 6:14 a.m. Her voice came through thin and cracked. "It's Grandma Emily. Ma, she's gone." I drove the 20 minutes through sheets of rain without turning on the radio, just the rhythm of wipers and my own shallow breathing. When I reached the hallway outside her room, my mother, Amanda Johnson, was already there, with my sister, Brittany Williams. They stood shoulder to shoulder, heads bent over a clipboard of paperwork, murmuring about probate timelines and filing deadlines. Neither looked up when I stepped closer. I stayed at the far end of the corridor, gripping a paper cup of vending machine coffee that went cold in my hand. The funeral took place 3 days later at an old granite church near Lincoln Park. The nave rose high and cold white lilies everywhere, the mahogany casket polished to a mirror shine. My mother delivered the eulogy, speaking for exactly 11 minutes about the Johnson family legacy tradition and how the next generation would carry it all forward. She named Brittany 4 times, highlighting her steady accounting career, her recent promotion at the firm. She mentioned me not once. Afterward, in the receiving line, one of my aunts leaned in and asked what I'd been working on lately. Before I could open my mouth, my mother cut in from behind. "She designs logos for small businesses." A few polite chuckles moved through the group. I felt the familiar heat climb my chest but turned and walked away without a word. That evening, 15 of us gathered at the family house in Lincoln Park for dinner. The colonial dining room glowed under candlelight, the long oak table set with sterling silver that had belonged to my grandmother's side for generations. A bottle of Cabernet breathed on the sideboard. My mother took the head seat as always. She raised her glass. "Grandma left everything to me to manage," she announced, scanning the faces around the table. "I'll ensure the assets are distributed to the right people based on capability." Her eyes landed on me. "That means you don't need to concern yourself with any of it, Emily. Complex matters aren't really your area." Brittany nodded, once decisive. Her husband, Joshua Wilson, gave a small approving smile and adjusted his tie. I set my fork down carefully. "Mom, Grandma told me—" My mother interrupted sharply. She was confused at the end. "Whatever she may have said, forget it." My mother stared at her plate and remained silent. After dinner, I excused myself and climbed the stairs to the bedroom I'd grown up in. The same faded poster was still taped to the wall from when I was 16. I sat on the edge of the twin bed and opened the nightstand drawer out of pure habit. Inside lay an envelope that hadn't been there before, cream-colored stationery with my name written in my grandmother's shaky but deliberate hand. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were 2 handwritten pages and a partial photocopy of a legal document headed Irrevocable Trust Agreement, Rebecca Brown Settler. Halfway down the first page, a single line had been highlighted in yellow: beneficiary Emily Anderson. I read the letter slowly, tears falling without sound. Grandma wrote that if I was holding this, my mother had already begun what she had always feared. She couldn't stop it while she was alive, but she had made certain the original trust was secure with her attorney, Matthew Davis. The copy she left was incomplete enough to confirm the truth, not enough to stand alone in court. "Don't show this to anyone yet," she warned. "Not your mother, not Brittany. Wait until the right time. Matthew will know exactly what to do. You were always my quiet strength, Emily. Don't let them break you." I folded the pages back into the envelope and held it against my chest. For the first time in years, the silence in that old room didn't feel empty. It felt like someone had believed in me enough to put it in writing. 3 weeks passed in a blur of deadlines and doubt. I threw myself into client work at my Wicker Park apartment, revising branding decks until my eyes burned, but the envelope from Grandma stayed on the corner of my desk like a silent challenge I wasn't ready to face again. One gray afternoon, I finally opened my laptop and typed Matthew Davis, Attorney, Estate Planning, Chicago into the search bar. The first result pulled up a small practice near the Loop, and the headshot hit me immediately. The same silver-haired man who had approached me at the funeral, shaken my hand gently, and said my grandmother was proud of me. I dialed the number before I could talk myself out of it. The receptionist answered with calm efficiency. "Mr. Davis has been expecting your call, Miss Anderson. Can you come in this afternoon?" 2 hours later, I sat across from him in a quiet office lined with leather-bound volumes and the faint scent of polished wood. Matthew Davis hadn't changed since the funeral. Same wire-rimmed glasses, same measured voice that made complicated things sound simple. He opened a thick folder and placed the original irrevocable trust document in front of me. "Your grandmother signed this 8 years ago," he said. "It designates you as the sole beneficiary of $620,000 in liquid assets, the Lincoln Park house, and the cottage on Lake Michigan." She insisted on a full cognitive evaluation the same week she executed it. The physician's report is attached. She scored in the 93rd percentile for her age group. She knew exactly what she was doing. He tapped the page. "Your mother, as trustee, has administrative control only. She has no power to alter the beneficiary designation distribute principle without your written consent or place any lien on the real property." She never reviewed the complete instrument, only the sections that named her trustee. I stared at the notary seal. "So she doesn't realize the house is mine?" Matthew shook his head. "People often assume real estate passes by default. Your grandmother purchased it with her family's money long before she married. It was never in your mother's name." I handed him the partial photocopy Grandma had hidden in my old nightstand. He scanned it quickly and nodded. "This was meant to alert you without exposing the full document. The originals remain in my safe. If we proceed, we can use them in court." Then he asked whether I had encountered any recent family communications. I pulled up the email chain that had landed in my inbox by mistake through the family group chat. Brittany had forwarded it to our mother's subject line, "Trust Amendment Draft Petition." The thread covered 2 weeks of back and forth, Brittany preparing a court filing to redesignate the beneficiary to herself, citing my pattern of unstable career decisions, lack of significant assets, and outstanding educational debt inconsistent with fiduciary responsibility. At the very bottom, her casual closing line to Mom: "She won't fight it. That's the beauty, Mom." My hands shook as I watched Matthew read. When he finished, he looked up without expression. "This constitutes clear evidence of breach of fiduciary duty and possible fraud upon the court. The petition falsely claimed inability to locate you. We have metadata, timestamps, everything. If you choose to act, the case is strong." I left his office carrying notarized copies and a quiet resolve that hadn't been there before. That same evening, I called Aunt Christine Miller, my grandmother's older sister. She picked up on the second ring. "Emily, I've been waiting for this. I told her about the trust, the emails, the meeting with Matthew. She let out a long breath. Your grandma shared the plan with me years ago. She watched Amanda pour praise on Brittany, her grades, her promotions, her marriage, and she worried you would be left with nothing but scraps. Rebecca said to me, Christine, if I'm not here, Amanda will try to take it all for Brittany. I fixed it so Emily is safe. This didn't start with the funeral. It's been building for a long time. Her voice softened. Your grandmother loved you more than words. She wanted you to have what she earned, not what someone else decided you deserved. I hung up and sat at my small kitchen table, the documents spread out under the single overhead light. The Thanksgiving invitation from my mother arrived the next day. Her voice on the phone was careful, almost pleading. The whole family will be there. It's time to mend things. I almost laughed out loud. My mother never mended anything. She broke what she didn't control and blamed the breakage on weakness. I told her I would come. But I wasn't returning to make peace. I was returning to stop pretending the silence was agreement. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I packed my camel coat toothbrush and manila folder of notarized copies, then drove south through the autumn haze of Chicago. The Lincoln Park house appeared through the trees exactly as it always had. White colonial facade, wrought iron gate, ancient oaks standing guard. Cars already lined the street by noon, and inside the place hummed with 30 relatives. Aunt Megan Taylor ruled the kitchen, directing people with a wooden spoon, while Cousin Tyler Moore moved through the living room, cracking jokes that made the younger cousins laugh too loud. Joshua Wilson stood near the fireplace, phone out, showing off photos from his new promotion, voice carrying over the chatter. I slipped into the kitchen and started helping Aunt Megan peel potatoes. She leaned in close while we worked side by side and whispered, Something's off with your mom lately. She's been secretive. Keeps checking her phone like she's waiting for bad news. I nodded once, keeping my expression blank, but her words settled like a stone in my stomach. By 4 o'clock, the dining room table was packed, overflow tables set up in the living room. I ended up at a folding table between Tyler and a 9-year-old second cousin who kept stealing rolls from my plate. My mother stood at the head of the main table under the crystal chandelier, raised her glass of Cabernet, and said to Brittany, who just closed her biggest account of the year. Applause rolled through the room. Brittany smiled modestly, Joshua squeezing her shoulder with obvious pride. My mother let the moment hang, then added, And tomorrow morning, I'll be making an important family announcement about Grandma's estate. I expect everyone to be present. She smiled the smile of someone who had already decided the outcome. I kept my fork moving slowly across my plate, face neutral. After the plates were cleared and pumpkin pie was half gone, the air shifted. My mother stood again, this time pointing straight at me. Emily, you threatened your sister with lies about the will. You think you can manipulate this family. Her voice sharpened to the tone she used when she wanted the whole room to listen. You're grounded until you apologize to Brittany. Go to your room. The room exploded, not in protest but in laughter. 30 adults, some covering their mouths, others snorting into their wine glasses. Brittany let out a delicate, performative giggle. Joshua clapped once lightly as if it were all harmless fun. My mother's eyes stayed fixed on me, waiting for the usual surrender. I held her gaze for 3 full seconds, then said in a voice so calm it surprised even me, All right. The laughter swelled louder as I stood and walked upstairs. Behind me, I heard Brittany murmur to Joshua, See, she never fights back. In the kitchen later, while I rinsed a roasting pan alone, Brittany leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Still haven't upgraded that old laptop, huh? She said, smirking. Some things never change. I kept scrubbing suds up to my elbows and didn't turn around. She waited a beat, then left. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, I dried my hands, pulled out my phone and called Matthew Davis. It rang twice. He answered immediately. Bring the originals tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I said. There was a short pause, then his steady voice. I'll be there. The laughter still drifted up through the floorboards from downstairs, but it sounded distant now, like noise from another house. The laughter echoed down the hallway as I walked upstairs. In that moment, The room felt smaller than ever, and I knew something had to change. I left at 4:15 a.m. Socks on hardwood so floors wouldn't creak tote with documents slung over shoulder. The house was still wrapped in darkness as I eased the back door shut and walked briskly to my car parked 2 blocks away under a street lamp. I drove to a 24-hour diner a few streets from Lincoln Park, slid into a corner booth and ordered black coffee I had no intention of drinking. The waitress set the mug down without a word. I stared at the clock above the counter, watching the minutes crawl. At 7:42 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Tyler. "Mom's furious. Where are you?" I let the screen go dark without replying. Inside the house, according to what Tyler recounted later, my mother came downstairs at 7:30. Hair neat blouse, poured coffee from the carafe and glanced around the kitchen. "Someone go wake Emily," she said casually. "She has an apology to make." No one stirred. Relatives kept their eyes on plates or phones. She climbed the stairs herself, knocked twice with that crisp, expectant rhythm she always used, then pushed the door open. The bed was made with hospital corners, closet bare, drawers empty. The only thing remaining was the framed photo of Grandma Rebecca on the nightstand turned face down. My mother stood frozen in the doorway for a long beat before she turned and descended slowly. In the dining room, she announced to the 20-odd people still picking at breakfast, "Emily's gone. She left in the middle of the night like a coward." Brittany looked up from her laptop and gave a small smile. "Well, that settles it." My mother nodded once. "It certainly does." She was drawing breath to continue when the doorbell cut through the quiet. Aunt Megan opened it. Matthew Davis stood on the threshold in a charcoal suit briefcase gripped firmly, face set in quiet fury. "I'm Matthew Davis, attorney for Rebecca Brown," he said. "I need to speak with the entire family right now." The dining room hushed in waves, conversation nearest the door dying first, then silence spreading until even the clink of silverware stopped. Matthew walked in, deliberately placed his briefcase on the dining table directly over the rumpled Thanksgiving linen, and unclasped it with a sharp click. His hands shook faintly, not from fear, but from restrained anger. My mother rose from her chair at the head. "Matthew," she said, voice edged. "You were not invited. This is my home." He met her stare evenly. "This is the home Rebecca Brown built with her family's money, Mrs. Johnson. And I'm here because I have a legal obligation to the beneficiary of her trust." The room went so quiet I could have heard a pin drop 3 rooms away. Matthew opened the briefcase and lifted the original trust document, cream paper bearing a vivid red notary seal. "This is the irrevocable trust executed 8 years ago," he said. "I was present at the signing along with 2 independent witnesses. It names Emily Anderson, sole beneficiary of $620,000 managed by U.S. Bank, plus the Lincoln Park property and the Lake Michigan cottage." He let the words settle. "As trustee, you hold administrative authority only. You are expressly prohibited from changing the beneficiary, dispersing funds without written consent, or encumbering the real property in any way." He set the document down. "In the past 3 months, you filed a petition to redesignate the beneficiary to Brittany, claiming inability to locate Emily." He withdrew the printed email chain, yellow highlights stark against the page. "These messages show Brittany drafted the petition, and you approved it." The closing line, "She won't fight it. That's the beauty, Mom." Brittany's face drained of color. Joshua slowly withdrew his hand from her arm. My mother's cheeks flushed deep red. "This is absurd," she said, voice trembling. Matthew reached into the briefcase once more and placed a single sheet on top of the stack. "This is confirmation from U.S. Bank, Chicago branch. It states the trust remains intact and that the petition falsely asserted inability to locate the beneficiary while she was sleeping under this roof last night." The look on her face in that instant, it was the first time the room had ever felt truly quiet. And for once, the silence wasn't mine to carry alone. The room went still, like the air had been sucked out. My mother's get out cracked in half as she jabbed a finger toward Matthew. "You're trespassing. I'll call the police right now." Matthew didn't flinch. He simply lifted the printed email chain higher so the yellow highlights caught the chandelier light and began reading aloud in a calm, deliberate voice. "She won't fight it. That's the beauty, Mom." Brittany's face turned the color of ash. Joshua quietly slid his hand from her shoulder and took a half step back. My mother's mouth closed, then opened again. "This is ridiculous," she managed, but the words sounded hollow. Aunt Christine rose from her chair near the window, voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Rebecca told me everything 8 years ago. She knew Amanda would try this. Let the man speak." Aunt Megan nodded sharply from the side. Tyler moved forward from the back row and stood beside me without a word. A low murmur started among the relatives. "Read the full document," someone said from the far end. "Let's hear it all." My mother's gaze darted around the room, and for the first time she registered the change, the same faces that had laughed the night before now watching with open doubt. She tried again, voice thinner. "Rebecca was confused when she signed. She didn't understand what she was agreeing to." Matthew placed the medical report on the stack without ceremony. "Your mother's physician performed a cognitive evaluation the week of signing. She scored in the 93rd percentile for her age group, sharper than most people here." He let the paper lie there like evidence on a witness stand. My mother stared at it, then at me, then back at the document. The color drained from her face entirely. "I was protecting the family assets," she said, but the words came out weak, almost pleading. I met her eyes and answered quietly, "You were protecting your control, not love." She spun toward Brittany, desperation flashing across her features. "Say something, you're the accountant." Brittany's voice was barely audible. "Irrevocable means irrevocable, Mom. I told you it was risky." Joshua stood up without a word, walked past the table and left the room. The door closed softly behind him, but the sound carried like a final period. Matthew closed the briefcase with a deliberate snap. "I will file to remove you as trustee on Monday morning. The trust is frozen until the court rules. No distributions, no changes." He looked around the room once more, then directly at my mother. "You assembled this audience for your announcement. Now they have heard the truth." Relatives exchanged glances. A few stood and left quietly. Others stayed watching my mother as though seeing her for the first time. Brittany remained seated, hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the tablecloth. My mother sank back into her chair, the untouched glass of Cabernet trembling slightly in front of her. The chandelier light caught the red wine and threw small rainbows across the ceiling, but no one moved to clear the plates or pour more drinks. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything that had finally been said. Monday morning, Matthew filed 3 documents with Cook County Circuit Court. The first petition sought to remove Amanda Johnson as trustee of Rebecca Brown's irrevocable trust, citing breach of fiduciary duty, failure to notify the beneficiary, false claims about her whereabouts in court filings, and an unauthorized attempt to amend an irrevocable instrument. The second requested Matthew Davis be appointed interim trustee until I could designate a permanent replacement. The third was a formal complaint lodged with the Illinois CPA Society against Brittany Williams for ethical violations, drafting a fraudulent petition to benefit an immediate family member while concealing a clear conflict of interest. 2 weeks later, the court granted the trustee removal on an interim basis. Amanda chose not to contest it. Her attorney, a mid-tier practitioner from a loop firm she finally reached, told her plainly she had no viable legal footing. The trust corpus of $620,000 transferred to an account in my name at U.S. Bank. I paid off my student loan of $38,000 with the most satisfying check I ever wrote. The deed to the Lincoln Park house and the Lake Michigan cottage was updated, my name replacing my grandmother's. The colonial, with its wrought iron gate, oak dining table, and overgrown garden, was finally mine. 6 months passed. Brittany's CPA license was suspended for 6 months after the Illinois Society found clear ethical breaches. Her largest clients dropped her within days of the complaint becoming semi-public on professional networks. She quietly shifted to freelance consulting work that required no license and no courtroom appearances. Joshua filed for divorce shortly after. The papers arrived without fanfare, just a process server at her new apartment. Amanda rented a small one-bedroom across town. Relatives stopped inviting her to gatherings. The phone calls dwindled to nothing. She lost the quiet authority she once wielded at every holiday table. I converted the downstairs study, the one my mother had used as her command center, into a graphic design studio. Mahogany bookshelves now held color swatches, plant reference books, and client mood boards. The old leather chair became my drafting spot. I spent the winter on my knees in the backyard garden, pruning dead branches, aerating soil that had gone sour from years of neglect. The roots were deeper than I expected. They had survived abandonment. They just needed someone to cut away the rot and let light in. I knew the feeling intimately. I started seeing a therapist in Chicago once a week to unpack the toxicity I had carried for so long. It wasn't dramatic sessions or breakthroughs. It was quiet, steady work, like tending soil one handful at a time. I blocked my mother's number the day the court order arrived. Brittany's too. I never replied to the single text she sent weeks later. We need to talk. The silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. Silence isn't agreement. I spent years quiet at the table, and they called it consent. Standing up showed me family isn't blood, it's respect. If yours belittles you, walking away isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing you can do. Grandma gave me proof I was worth protecting. Turns out I could protect myself too. That kind of quiet freedom, it changes everything. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.